my accent, and I was like, okay, fine, I guess I got away with this, because I, like Ben, did what any self-respecting actor would do when they asked me if I played bass, and I lied, and I said yes. But then what was amazing is they actually brought me out about 5 weeks before we started shooting, and I got to work with Paul Westwood, who is maybe the best studio bassist in all of England, and do lessons with him 4 or 5 days a week. And then we continued that playing throughout the entire 6-month shoot, and it was really, it was a very intensive process to sort of, you know, become these guys with the instruments and the accents and the movements and everything. It was a huge challenge.
Definitely, yeah, it was definitely a huge challenge. I mean, but what's great about playing these roles as opposed to other roles is there's so many resources available. Like there's so many so much archive footage. There's so many documentaries, so much stuff on YouTube that we can use, and also the guys themselves, Brian and Roger, you know, were incredibly supportive, not just to me and Grill, but to Joe as well, you know, and to Rami as well, and they really, you know, I asked Roger a million questions. He probably doesn't want to talk to me ever again after that questions I asked him. But you know, it was so useful.
That's typical when people talk to you.
It's true, actually. It's true. Yeah, it's true. Character trait. There's something. Yeah, there's something that it took me a long time before I actually realised Roger did. I don't know if he still does. But he does this thing where often he's kind of like, if he makes like a quip or like a joke, or even if he's just laughing at someone else, he kind of begins, and then there's almost like a moment of him becoming self-conscious and kind of like not committing fully to the laugh and the smile and coming back down. It's hard to explain. I could show you if I could pull up YouTube, but yeah. So that was something I found really interesting. You go.
Yeah. What I found fascinating was that John was, I sort of describe him as the accidental rock star. This was something that he didn't think he was going to do with his life. He was just doing it on weekends for fun, sort of a hobby. And he blinked one day and he was in the biggest band of all time. And so that was just like such an interesting journey to see like this guy who was really more technical, right? Like he built his own bass amp and he was into stuff like that. And before you knew it, he's writing #1 hit songs. And like, that's just not a journey I think I've ever heard of with a rock star. You know, it's always the dream. And so that was just kind of a fun, sort of cool thing to learn, you know.
Okay. That's how she looks. So you haven't found that?
No, not that one.
No.
That wasn't a part of our research.
There we go.
So,
can we get a copy of that for the soundtrack of the movie? It's not too
I
late.
do.
It comes out in a couple of days.
I'm
Put on the
working on
DVD.
it. See you tomorrow. Bring the Brutian song, and you can celebrate and have a party with it.
We'll put it in the end credits.
Perfect.
Thanks, mate.
Yes! Because it was just such an iconic moment that, like, to think that we got to be a part of that was just incredibly special in my life. When I was very young, it was sort of the grunge era, so it was like Nirvana and sort of Pearl Jam, very serious, sort of dour music, where I'd just be like, you know, you don't get it, or just like lock myself in my room and be sad. But once I got over that ridiculousness and realized that Queen was so celebratory and their music was so intricate and they crossed boundaries and genres and their lyrics and their sound was just soaring and epic, it just like, my fandom has just gone like this to the point where like, about 5 years ago I made a film and as a director, and every day going to set I would listen to Somebody to Love to pump myself up and to get myself ready for that day. And now to be a part of this legacy in any small way is just like the thrill of a lifetime.
Maybe it's because I grew up in England as well. You just know about Queen, and it's partly through your parents, but I don't know, it just goes in through osmosis. It's kind of every sports stadium they play We Will Rock You, not every, but a lot of adverts on TV, they'll have a Queen song, it'll be in the soundtrack to movies, to whatever. It's just, you can't help but know the story, and occasionally Freddie Mercury comes up and people talk about it and talk about their experience of Queen. So I kind of always felt like I knew Queen before I even really listened to them consciously. How's that?
E é assim, com Ben Hardy, de bigodinho de leite, que a gente começa esse vídeo.
We're good. Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. What attracted you guys to play this role? I mean, it's Queen, right? But what was the most exciting experience about it?
I mean, I've always been obsessed with the idea of being a rock star. I don't even think it kind of exists in the same way today as it did back then in the 70s and 80s and 60s and before. But
When else? What
else? We can go through them all. So like to have the opportunity to play a rock star and kind of just get some semblance of an idea of what it would be like to be in their shoes was just like, yeah, it was a dream come true to actually get the job.
This is one of those jobs where
Yeah.
everyone wants it.
Yeah.
You will do anything you can to get it. This is why we're actors, right? To live out the other dreams that we couldn't quite reach. And so to find out that they're making a movie about one of the most iconic bands in history, it's just like there's no reason you don't want to do a job like this. And it was just amazing to be able to like learn the instrument and do the accent and do the movements and play a real person. All of it together was just pretty amazing.
What was the hardest song to play and perform on the stage?
Ooh, we probably have different answers for this. Bohemian Rhapsody's pretty fast, so that's sort of a tough one. Killer Queen was really interesting on the bass because it's not very typical. It doesn't repeat. That was a sort of challenging one that I really loved to play though, because it was sort of I couldn't hear it at first, and then when you really get into it, you hear like how interesting and complex it is. That's probably my number one.
Number one for me is difficult. It's probably the first one that comes to mind is Fat Bottom Girls, because it's just like on the drums, it's just so like rocky. You just get into it, and it's just like I really enjoyed playing it. It's not necessarily the most difficult song to play. There are a couple of tricky fills in there, but yeah, so I really enjoyed rocking out to that one. It would be either that or Keep Yourself Alive, because it's got like a really interesting groove. I really enjoyed playing that until it got to the drum solo. I'm gonna go. My all-time favorite is White Queen, As It Began, of Queen 2. But today I feel like saying Liar catalogue here.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's actually a really fun. Well, I think
Is
it's
that
funny.
a dig at me? Liar?
No,
Is that what
no.
you're trying to say?
Yeah. There's actually. Has anyone seen that video of us singing "Somebody to Love" in your car?
I don't think
It's
so.
like me,
no,
you, and
that
Quill.
one needs to get out
You
there.
need to post that or something.
I know. Masterpiece, but for me, I think that Somebody to Love is equally as epic and just a little more accessible. The lyrics just sing to me a little bit more, and something about the simplicity of repeating that lyric, "Find me somebody to love," just has always just like really touched my heart. So yeah, that's all-time favorite. This job though has changed my feelings about a lot of songs though. You know, when you really get to learn them, how to play them, who wrote them, where they were in their lives when they wrote them, you know, how you relate to the other band members, it sort of gives you an appreciation for quite a few of their songs.
To meet Brian May and Roger Taylor, do you remember any advice or story about the band?
I mean, so much. They were like nothing but supportive, you know. I mean, I had so many. When I met Roger, I was incredibly nervous because, you know, there's a pressure of playing a real life person, you know, and I was worried about, you know, what he was going to think, but he just kind of reassured me like from day one, and was just incredibly supportive throughout the entire process. And I had like a million questions. I tried not to like bombard him with the Spanish Inquisition. That was an awful pun, but yeah, he was just incredibly helpful, and I'm just incredibly thankful.
Because John wasn't on set, I really had to lean on Brian and Roger sort of to give me a little bit more insight that maybe I couldn't get from interviews or from watching concert footage. And it was amazing, and that's what was so wonderful about them is that they could have just been like, right, we're going to focus on the guy playing me, and that's who we care about. But they really cared about the band in its entirety and making sure that we all felt comfortable and felt like, supported. And so, yeah, he just gave me like little things, like how John used to lick his fingers when he would play the bass because the strings would get stuck.
Into you now.
Queen will, and it's so insane. You would think that like doing a movie about Queen or any band that you would get so sick of their music, and when you were done, you wouldn't want to listen to them anymore. But literally, when I went back to the States, all I did was listen to Queen. Like on every time I got in the car, I was listening to all the songs that we didn't get to touch on, and like all the back catalog stuff. And then as you were just talking about, we were all together in LA about 2 weeks after we were finished filming, because we just can't get enough of each other, I guess. And Somebody to Love came on in the car, and it was me, Ben, and Gwill, and we just like pumped it up and like sang it in the Hollywood Hills at the top of our lungs.
Kind of mine, but now after listening to their music, you know, I just have such an appreciation of how talented they were as songwriters and as musicians. And like a lot of my favorite songs, like I was saying to you before, like White Queen and Liar, things like that, ones that not necessarily everyone knows. You know, they've got such a range of music of different styles. They really, they're now definitely in my top 5 for sure. Yeah.